Today we're digging into the core argument of Richard Wolff's book, Democracy at Work. Now, we're not going to get bogged down in the usual policy debates or day-to-day market buzz. Nope, we're going deeper to look at the fundamental design, the very structure of the modern company itself. Wolff's entire case really hinges on this one idea. He's basically saying, hey, to understand how capitalism works, you got to stop looking at all the usual stuff. The real action, the system's core logic, well, according to him, it's found in the one place most of us spend our lives, the workplace.
So what exactly is this system we're talking about? Well, this analysis frames modern capitalism as a very specific kind of control architecture. Think of it like a blueprint for how to organize people and decisions inside every single office, factory, and store. And it's all designed to manage one key thing.
And that key thing is the surplus. It's a simple idea, really. It's just the difference between the total value a worker creates with their labor and what they actually get paid in wages. It's all that extra value that's generated.
And that brings us to the most important question in this whole analysis. Who gets to control that surplus? The answer to this one question, according to Wolff, defines pretty much everything else about the economic system. Who gets the rewards, what kinds of things get made, and what drives the whole machine forward.
So here you can see the two basic models side by side. In a typical company, a pretty small group at the top, the board of directors, the major shareholders, they're the ones who control the surplus. They decide what to do with it. But in the alternative, a worker self-directed enterprise, it's the workers, the very people who created that surplus, who get to collectively decide how it's used.
Okay, so once you have a system where that small group at the top is in charge, it creates a really powerful and specific set of incentives. The main goal becomes making that pool of surplus as big as possible. And we can actually see how that has played out historically in a really clear way.
For a really long time, about a century actually, up until the 1970s, things moved together. As American workers got more productive and created more value, their real wages, that's wages adjusted for inflation, they went up too. The whole pie got bigger, and their slice of it also got bigger. But then something changed, big time. And the split is, it's just dramatic. You can see worker productivity kept right on climbing, thanks to new tech and better skills. But real wages, for most people, they just flatlined. For over 30 years, workers were creating more and more value, but their paychecks just weren't keeping up.
So you have to ask, right? Where did all that extra money go? Well, that widening gap, that was the surplus. And it was captured by the company, showing up as record corporate profits, which in turn helped fuel a massive boom in the stock market. From this perspective, this wasn't some kind of accident. It was the logical result of the system's core incentive.
Now, this whole dynamic, productivity going up while wages stay flat, it had these huge, predictable ripple effects that changed the entire economy. And it created a strange kind of puzzle that needed a solution.
And here's the central puzzle. If people weren't actually earning more money, how did they keep buying more stuff? Bigger houses, newer cars, all of it. Our economy runs on people buying things. So how did that keep happening? How was the dream of a rising standard of living kept alive?
The answer, it turns out, was debt. The system basically created a workaround, a kind of patch. Those stagnant wages were propped up by a massive, historic explosion in household debt. Mortgages, credit card debt, student loans, you name it. This let the whole structure keep going, but it came at a price. It built tremendous instability right into the heart of the financial system.
And here's where you can see the feedback loop. Those huge profits that came from the productivity wage gap, they got funneled into the financial system. And what did the banks do? They loaned a chunk of that money right back to the same workers who weren't getting raises, but now in the form of home loans and credit cards. It was a cycle that was incredibly profitable for a while, but it was just fundamentally unstable.
So, this analysis then zooms out and connects the dots between the internal structure of a company and the wider society we all live in. It argues that the way we organize our economy has very direct consequences for our politics.
The argument goes something like this. If most people spend 8 or 9 hours a day in a top-down, hierarchical place where they have basically no say in the big decisions that affect their lives, well, that makes it pretty hard to have a truly functioning democracy in the political world. Economic power, especially when it's concentrated in the hands of the people who control the surplus, almost always translates into political power.
And this is what leads to a crisis in perception. We see the symptoms, right? A housing bubble bursts, a big bank collapses, and we treat them like they're just isolated failures in the financial system. We totally miss the connection back to the root cause, that decades-long story of flat wages, which itself was driven by the underlying control architecture of the workplace.
So, if the problem is built into the architecture, the solution has to be architectural too. The analysis isn't really about better rules or regulations, it's about fundamentally redesigning the blueprint of the company itself.
And the alternative blueprint proposed here is the Workers' Self-Directed Enterprise, or WSDE. In this model, the people who actually produce the surplus, the workers, they essentially become their own board of directors. They get to collectively decide what to make, how to make it, and crucially, what to do with the surplus that they all generate together.
So really, the whole argument boils down to this. If we want to see different economic outcomes, like a different distribution of income and wealth, we can't just tinker around the edges of the system. We have to go right to its core design at the point of production. And the question it leaves us with is a big one. What would it really mean to extend the principles of democracy into our economy? Crisis and Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis and Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.